In January 1919, Boston was preparing for an ordinary winter day. But in one neighborhood, an enormous industrial tank stood quietly above the streets.
The tank was designed to store thousands of gallons of molasses.
At the time, such industrial tanks were an important part of the city's economy. The facility was part of a busy industrial area near the harbor. Ships, railways, and factories connected the neighborhood to a growing city. Molasses was transported through the harbor and stored before being distributed. The sweet liquid was used in food production and other industries.
The industrial world was changing rapidly.
Across the city, newspapers reported on business, politics, and everyday life. Nothing suggested that the quiet industrial district would soon make headlines. January 15 began like any other winter morning. People went about their normal routines. Workers arrived at factories and businesses throughout the neighborhood. Above them stood the enormous storage tank. The tank contained a huge quantity of molasses. Questions about the tank's construction and condition would later become important. Engineers relied on the construction methods available at the time. But the structure had been standing for only a few years. That morning, the neighborhood appeared completely ordinary. People walked beneath the massive tank without giving it much thought. Then, shortly after noon, something changed. Witnesses later remembered an unusual sound coming from the direction of the tank. For a moment, nobody understood what was happening. Within seconds, the quiet neighborhood would become the center of one of America's strangest industrial disasters. Then the enormous tank suddenly failed. Thousands of gallons of molasses were released into the surrounding area. The thick liquid moved far faster than anyone expected. Within moments, streets and nearby properties were affected. The scale of the event was difficult to comprehend. The flowing mass reached areas around the industrial district. Transportation through the neighborhood was suddenly disrupted. Workers and officials began assessing what had happened. Authorities quickly arrived to investigate the unusual disaster.
Their first task was to understand how the massive tank had failed.
Engineers began collecting evidence from the site.
The structure itself became the most important clue.
Investigators examined its design, materials, and construction. News of the disaster quickly spread across Boston. Newspapers struggled to describe the extraordinary scene.
The story soon became national news.
Witnesses described the strange sound and sudden movement they had observed.
Their accounts helped investigators reconstruct the sequence of events.
Engineers began asking whether the tank had been strong enough for its enormous contents. The construction details would become central to the investigation.
Material quality and structural design were carefully examined.
The enormous cleanup operation began. Cleaning the thick residue proved surprisingly difficult. The sticky material affected streets, buildings, and transportation routes.
After the disaster, attention turned toward one important question: who was responsible?
The case would eventually become a major legal battle. Engineers and lawyers examined every available detail.
The condition and construction of the tank came under intense scrutiny.
Investigators studied how the tank had been designed and assembled. Even the smallest construction details could become important evidence. Experts tried to determine what had caused the structural failure. Temperature, pressure, and the enormous quantity of liquid were all considered.
Changes in temperature may have played an important role.
The weather had changed significantly around the time of the event.
Researchers later examined weather records for additional clues.
Modern analysis has helped explain why the conditions may have mattered.
Computer models can now demonstrate how different factors may have interacted. The event also changed the way cities thought about industrial safety. Officials began paying closer attention to large industrial structures. Engineering inspections became an increasingly important part of industrial regulation.
Technology now allows engineers to monitor pressure, temperature, and structural conditions.
Modern simulations can identify weaknesses long before they become serious problems.
The neighborhood itself eventually changed with the city.
But museums and archives continue to preserve the story.
The surviving records reveal how one industrial failure changed an entire community.
The Great Molasses Flood became more than a strange historical event. It became a lesson in engineering and safety. And more than a century later, the story still reminds us that even the most ordinary-looking structures can hide extraordinary risks.